This is the Trusting Our Men interview series, where I explore and unpack what is still stopping us from cultivating trust, partnership, and safety with our men. Join me and my co-host Madelyn Moon as we have difficult conversations with conscious men in hopes of building a bridge of more compassion and understanding.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Trusting Our Men Again series. I am transformational life coach Madelyn Moon, and I am here with my co-host Nadia Munla, and we are joined by Kyle Lipton today, a dear friend and a wonderful speaker today around the masculine and vulnerability and authenticity. Nadia?
Yeah. So Kyle Lipton is a content creator, a transformational leader, speaker, and someone excited about giving and living more of his true awakened nature and giving every last ounce of love that he has in this lifetime. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So we love to ease into this conversation nice and easy. So we're going to start off with like the easiest question ever.
Yeah.
And that is currently, what is very alive for you in the world and realm of gender dynamics?
That's a really good question. In the world of gender dynamics, one thing that I was thinking of yesterday that really had me intrigued is, so when we integrate our feminine and masculine, it's like the feminine is the surrender, the intuition, the almost like this ocean of creative energy. And when we get into that state for ourselves, then our inner masculine is the one that carries that out. So it's almost as if I was thinking about that in relation to muses, for example, like how were men so creative and they had a muse, which is also, I think, symbolic of our own inner feminine. And when we honor what that brings out of us, then the masculine energy of drive, of drive, of inspiration can carry that through. So that's been fascinating to me.
Sitting with that for a moment, because I feel like the idea of an external muse versus an internal muse is something that I haven't really thought of much. And it's true, in the past, there really was so much of this. It was just part of what you do. You have a muse, you know? And nowadays, there's nearly a sense of shame from the guys. Like, I was recently watching an HBO documentary, I think it's called Swiped, I'm not sure, where they were talking to a lot of these younger men, I'd say probably college years. And there was a clear understanding that you either just don't have, any inspiration or feelings for women, or if you do, you hide it. That even there's sort of like a sense of, I'm too tough, I'm too much of a dude to get inspiration from the feminine, which in this case, in that conversation, was women. But really it's I think symbolic of also men's sort of disconnection from their internal feminine, which you're speaking to, which I love.
Yeah, 100%. And another thing that I was thinking of is, I would imagine back in that time, it would probably be frowned upon to embody those qualities that the muse that they're inspired by has. So that's why it's externalized. So what I feel is, we evolve more and more, it'll be easier to access our own inner muse, so to speak.
Yeah, makes sense. So do you feel, Kyle, like male sexual shame is an epidemic in our society? Is this something that you're finding is a thing?
100%. 100%. What I've noticed in myself is, I've noticed two things. I was thinking about this recently. When I had a phase where I was single, and the goal for me and a lot of other men at that point in time is how many chicks can you sleep with? How many women's numbers can you get? How many dates can you go on? And there's this epidemic of that. And then what I noticed in my relationships has also been, when I would get into a relationship, I would repress myself. So all of those qualities of desire, the good qualities as well, of desire, of asking for what you want, of feeling attraction towards someone else, were repressed. And then that would actually cause this shame for having these feelings. So it's like, I feel ashamed that I feel this way, and I can't access that because there's some social construct that I put as to what's acceptable. And of course, I think there's boundaries, communication, and all these things, but to also have a level of honoring of yourself, which also lets you trust yourself more, which also lets women trust you more because you trust yourself. And I feel like that's such an important thing. And to also find ways that are healthy to honor your desires without them being shamed. Because I think a lot of men are like, I'm afraid she's going to think I'm creepy or be put off or give me the cold shoulder, which may happen. But if we want to expand, I think there has to be room for desire to be expressed and initiated. And then the other person can choose whether or not to reciprocate and these things. But where I feel like a lot of violence and a lot of sexual things happen is where people don't feel they can get what they want. So when they don't feel like they can get what they want, they don't feel like they can have their desire received, then how that manifests externally is, all right, let me do something to get this need met, because it's an important need for people.
Yeah. And so me and Nadi were talking about this earlier, this inherent like primal sexuality in men that we so love. Like we so love that warrior, that fierceness, that like,
yeah,
I love her so much. I'm going to claim her when it's conscious,
100%.
when they are doing their work in this world and they are doing it in a sacred way. Because if you're not doing it in a particular way that's very heart connected, then it can come out, like you were saying, like maybe not even quite to violence yet. Someone that's like doing their work in this world to the best of their ability, maybe not fully conscious. We all are not all the time, but it can still come out in ways that make us want to contract and like, So I want to come back or go deeper into this topic of men claiming their primal sexuality. But before we go there, and this may need more context, I want to hear more about your background, a little bit about your story, like even any sexual shame that you experienced younger as you were growing up, and now how that contributed to your, I don't know particularly what I'm looking for in this, but that moment that the sexual shame was created, and how you worked through those initial first years of claiming your manhood in a way that is conscious, because I'm sure those were slightly different than the ways that you may feel it today.
Sure. I actually have two things to share on that. So one is when I was younger, I actually had some sexual experiences with one of my close friends who was my best friend, who was a guy. And that put like a lot of things into question for me. I was probably around 5 or 6. And I just remember not telling anyone until I was about 13. I broke down in tears. And I was so depressed because I was questioned myself. I was like, am I going to go to hell? Am I going to burn? And it's like all these things a 13-year-old's thinking. And then it's like at one point I'm like crying, reading a Bible, trying to figure out like how to fix myself, or how to like how to not die and be punished, which I feel like is a huge underlying bias that a lot of us operate on. How do I do something? How do I express myself without being punished? I feel like it's a huge unconscious conversation that a lot of us are in. I'll speak for myself. And one of the ways that really helped me to move through that was vulnerability, sharing it until it had no charge or less charge, sharing it when I shook, sharing it in front of rooms of people. And through that helped me heal a lot, because shame thrives in secrecy. And I feel like the more that we're secret about certain things that are happening in our life, the more they run our life unconsciously, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because it's going to operate in your life either way. So it's either going to operate consciously or unconsciously. So you're either going to have the distortions and the things that are going to naturally come from suppressing it, or you're going to maybe go through a little bit of fear and shaking and vulnerability where you just express it. So that was an experience for me. And then I've actually never shared this anywhere, but when I was 18, I was very big into the whole party scene. I was a club promoter. I was like doing all that stuff. And I remember there was a specific party that I was at, and I ended up getting drunk. Didn't have sex, but I had some sexual experiences with another woman who was there. And she, I forget what happened. So we were in a room, and then I was like, I'll be right back. And what happened is I left the room and I never came back, which on my end, I'm like, that's a dick move. Like, that's not cool. And here's where things got really scary for me and changed the trajectory of my life a lot. She ends up leaving the place crying. I'm kind of like, what the fuck's going on? So then I end up getting a slip in the mail from a detective, which pretty much scared the absolute shit out of me. I'm like, what did she say? What happened? What's going on? And I put a lot of my life into question at that point, knowing that, one, I could go to jail, or like all these things happen. And for me, that changed the way that I related to women, and it brought so much fear into my relating at that point moving forward, and like what's okay and what's acceptable. And it like really shook me up for a long time, and I'm sure it still lingers to some degrees.
Wow. Letting that like just sink in.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm really curious to hear a little bit more from you as to whether you feel like, obviously it was, a very challenging, very scary situation. And do you feel like this was part of what helped you step up into the next level of relating, even though it initially came in a really shitty package?
100%. Like, I think in a lot of ways, it brought me a new level of discernment, and also just discernment's a big piece, and also just to be more aware and to also be more considerate. Like, from my end, even though there was nothing that I did that was like horrible or harmful in a physical sense or anything like that, like the fact that I said I'll be right back and I didn't come back, like that's a big deal to someone, which I honor. And I mean, not honor, I own that. And the thing that really, it just made me more conscious in interacting, and also more fearful. But I think it's I don't know, I haven't really explored this too much for myself. But yeah, that's about where I'm at with it.
So there's two really unique pieces here of the sexual shame conversation. And we can dive into both of those like separately, but the first one, something is coming up for me around brotherly love or even homosexuality. And the shame, I'm assuming, that was created around you being with another boy was around like, boys don't do this together. And like, what's right, what's wrong, black and white, religion, heaven, hell, all this. Yeah. So this is, I feel like this is very inclusive in this conversation that we're having about, like gender relations. What do you feel about men healing the men bond and the work that needs to be done there, and if it has a correlation to how men will interact with women? Like this, the shame that men have around, I've even heard people say jujitsu. Like I've heard that jujitsu is just stupid because it's guys hugging and rolling around. Like I've heard people say that, which it's a very honorable sport. But there's like this underlying shame around jujitsu, which is like so, to me, very crazy. Masculine.
Yeah.
But there's like this shame around men being really close with men, and men alongside the don't show emotion, be strong, don't be vulnerable. There's also this other belief, it sounds, that men are raised with, is that you are only so close to other men. And so I guess if I could formulate a question around this is, where do you find the men bonding with men and men healing the men wound, I guess, the men brotherly wound, how that would come into play with relationships with women.
100%. Well, I think on one end, it's a fear of even just moving through all those fears to even be that intimate with a friend that's automatically going to affect your relationships. If you could move through the bias of being called gay or being called way too girly or sissy or boys don't, like, that's already so much growth in and of itself to just be able to get to that point. And I think too, just on a deeper level of connecting heart to heart with another human also just breeds more intimacy in all areas of your life, and especially relationships, intimate relationships. And also just to know that you have people that really got your back and who you also let see you, and you can't really see another person if you're like this all the time and you have your hand out and, you only let them get so close.
Mm.
Was there a second piece, Madelyn, that you wanted to address? I know that you sort of started with one before I jumped in. I just wanted to.
No, I feel like that's good. I'm just kind of, I'm just sitting with this idea of like the brother wound, and like this, I'm so far disconnected from what men have experienced in being called gay and that shame that would come around that. So my question formulation around this is pretty surface level of just like, how do you let go of that shame? How do you move through that? How do we all put aside these words and labels so that men can get closer to men and have people that have their back? And I'm sure there's so many ways that fear around homosexuality or being labeled as different from these guys and these guys affects your relationship with your lover.
100%. Yeah. I mean, even another way that could manifest is like, this is perfect. How am I supposed to act in front of her? If you're a straight male, let's say, and it's like, oh, what's acceptable? Oh, am I being too feminine? Oh, what if I tell her I'm going shopping for clothes right now? What's she going to think? Or like, just certain ways of being, like, just that could be really scary. And men could be still in that same level of avoiding looking weak, which in turn makes them probably develop a lot of physical problems. I would imagine shoulder problems would probably be huge. You're carrying so much weight and so much responsibility and holding it all together, which is what men are so famous for. And I've been so guilty of not guilty, but I've done that a lot. It's like we try and hold it all together. We try and present ourselves as strong. We try and present ourselves as this. And it's like the whole time we're holding back our fucking heart. It's like, oh, look at how strong I am. I can do this, 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 and this. But I'm not going to let you see my heart. I'm not going to let you see my dreams, my aspirations, what I really want from you, what I really love, what would actually light me up, all because I'm afraid to share this other side of me that is maybe more feminine, so to speak, or what you would perceive them to think is feminine. And I think it's just total bullshit. And it's just very hardly ingrained in society that I feel like it's loosening up a lot.
It is. And I think as we play more with gender fluidity and also like different, like understanding the idea of, the masculine and feminine pole and understanding how fluid that is itself, as well. I think people in the past have been very like, okay, it's just got to be this way or that way. And
I have a question for you guys if you're open to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would see the masculine, like what really lights a woman up in relationship, or a feminine in relation to the masculine, is a man being a presence, a solid, grounded, unmoving presence. And that would be the equivalent to like the divine masculine showing up for the feminine. I'm curious, what do you guys feel is the equivalent to when a man's emotional? Like what role does the woman play in that? If a man is feeling these emotions in a way he's taking responsibility for them, like, hey, I'm feeling this way. You don't have to support me, but I would love it if you would. I'm curious just how you guys feel about that.
You can jump.
Yeah, can I say? Yeah. Okay. So what's coming to me first is that naturally I take the other pole. So I might go into the space holder there, because this is like very challenging for him, most likely, to open up in this way. And so what I personally do, and I'm still learning through all this, but what I personally do is go into that space holder of like just giving him room to share, but not necessarily. And it's not to say that we want our men to do this either. So maybe it's kind of the same, not necessarily trying to lead him to any conclusion or fix it or guide him or coach him, heaven forbid, because that's generally what I might want to do is let me coach you through this. And I see a limiting belief. But just holding this space, and for me, and the way that my lover does it, my lover in particular is very, it makes me want to come closer to him. It really makes me want to come closer to him. And instead of the pole being I'm in the masculine space holder, it's more like I'm holding space, but I'm nurturing. So I'm doing it softly. And I've had this theme come up in my life recently that I really crave to be seen as a nurturer, because I have felt very disconnected from that for most of my life. So anytime I'm feeling that there's an opportunity for me to have this mother energy, whether it be a client reaching out or someone that's triggering the heck out of me, or my partner coming to me and I feel like, oh, he needs something from me, I ask myself, how can I be in that mothering energy? And I think there's a way to hold space for your partner when he goes into that vulnerable emotional state. That's not the masculine pole, can be, but rather holding space and listening, but coming at it from a very Mother Earth, grounded, rooted, I've got you, softness energy.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm gonna also, I'll add in that, yes to everything that Maddie was saying. And I think the key here is that we take everything too literally, or we there's new rules and then we just like stick to them so strongly, like it's got to be this, it's got to be that. And I think in the case of polarity and these who's holding what pole, I think that in terms of my sexual being, I'm not necessarily attracted to a partner that is consistently in their soft emotional, right? Like that to me is, if that were like an ongoing occurrence day after day after day, as much as, even though as a human, I want to say like, of course, if it takes you years, honey, like I'm here for you. Like my erotic charge is going,
100%.
right? From 100 to 0. And that doesn't mean, just because I can recognize that piece, it doesn't mean at all that I cannot allow space for my partner to feel his feelings, because that would be insane. Because ultimately, though, I think that unconsciously there is, I'm holding space for that open-heartedness so that there is less distance. There's less like a sense of like disconnect between us, so that and more so that there's also less of a disconnect between him and his truth, so that he can get back to a place of like clean, like stillness. Does that make sense? So it's nearly like, it's like he's moving through something to get back to the place that I like it, which is like, okay, you're here, you're sturdy, you're steady, you got this. All right, great, it's my turn.
100%.
And that's like the truth. And it's even to me, I feel a little shitty saying it, because I'm like, does that make me like less of a compassionate human? And I think that the truth is, many women out there have men who are, going through a grieving process or depression or lack of purpose. And they may not share it with him, but oftentimes they're coming to their girlfriends and they're like, is he gonna get his shit together or what, And so I think that the key is to be able to create space to bring him back to his like aligned truth, so that he can go back to what's more of his essence, which is this masculine energy,
100%. I think what I've noticed in my own and just my own experiences of fear of the person that I'm sharing this with to lose attraction to me. So I'm curious, what would create a safe space for that?
So I think
so good.
Say, obviously it'll still happen, they still might lose attraction in the moment. but then it's almost like this, oh my gosh, I can't share because I'm afraid she'll lose attraction to me.
Yeah, which is, that's totally an unfair situation to be in, right? So I think that no, I feel a lot more attracted to my partner who shares his truth with me, because it's his truth. But the key is that he can't stay there. Meaning he can stay in his truth, but he can't stay, if he stays in the like, just because I am of primarily feminine essence. Now it could be different for someone else, but for me, my ratio was super high feminine. And so if he's going to stay there and can't move out of it, that's when I feel the erotic charge goes down. But actually connecting heart to heart to me is a huge turn on. And from as the feminine essence, I'm trying to get us more together. I am championing love. I am championing union. So actually heart to heart, conversation or energy is one that will have me feel more turned on. But then we can't both stay swimming in the water. You know what I mean? Because then we're just like, oh, where are we? What's happening? Someone has to go back to like, okay, I'm holding.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Cool distinction. I just think it's interesting because it's like, if that comes up, the thing to do is to like move through it however you feel is best, because then that's what's going to bring you back to that place. But I feel like if so many people avoid, oh my goodness, I shouldn't say anything because then it builds up and then all the dysfunction leads from there.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to say about this that I think is really important is the distinction between being like stoic and repressed and being like, I'm in my masculine and I am, stillness and presence and consciousness like embodied, right? Because if you're actually feeling lots of feelings, but you're hiding them, so you're not actually super present.
Yeah.
So we feel that, there's a sense of, just because on the outside it looks the same, that we don't pick up on the difference. But actually we aren't attracted to the version of stoicism or distance or
withholding.
When there isn't actually a clear like a emptiness in you, because you have these emotions. So we can sniff that out in a heartbeat. So that just adds more disconnect, more distance, and then there's more, and just keeps going. Versus just if we like come to heart, have the conversation, move through it, and then you get to go back to like, okay, I'm empty again. Fantastic. Now we can go have the hot sex.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think a key distinction is being emotional and being vulnerable. It's like being emotional could just be emoting recklessly with no abandon. Here's like not taking responsibility, just like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this and this and this is happening, versus I'm really scared. Can you hold space? And I think that's also a big difference too in the level of charge maybe that still is in a relationship in those moments when a guy is just like, holy shit, I'm swimming and drowning in all my emotions. I'm in this water. Can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? Versus, this boat's getting a little rocky. Can you hear me out?
Yeah. And even within that, there's like clarity. Like you're still in touch with that.
Yes.
You're still in touch with that directness, and like you're the one in that instance that's setting a container, still like preparing your partner for what's about to come. And it's like, all right, like I know my role here, and I can be here for you. All right. So I want to go back to the topic of anger and violence. If you guys don't mind, if you people don't mind. So I want to talk about, so underneath what you were saying earlier, underneath the violence that happens within a man who is afraid he can't get what he wants is really that fear. But I want to talk more about where we can go with the conscious man in not violence, but in anger and the repression of anger. I was telling you this earlier, Kyle, I was having this conversation with someone who was sharing to me, like, he wants to be a good man. He wants to be a conscious man. And never in his life before, and he's an Aries, by the way, so he's got all this like aggression in him anyways, but never in his life before has he thought that it's okay to feel anger. So he openly admits this is all repressed and it's frustrating, and it's led to the demise of a relationship because he had no outlet. And so there was just constant battling back and forth, and neither one of them knew how to deal with that anger. So I want to hear from you. How do you personally, Kyle, channel when you have feelings of anger in a way that's healthy and productive to you as a man, and to the trust that you want your woman to feel when she is with you, because you are a trustable man and you are processing your emotions. How do you deal with anger?
Yeah, that's a good piece. I've dealt with it in so many ways. Uh, from getting in my car and just blasting angry music and just screaming and getting fucking angry, to also just like getting clear as to what it is that I want. Like, what is the need? Like, because obviously there's a need not getting met, and that's why I'm fucking pissed. And then to look under there and to see, like, all right, what do I need? And maybe what I need is actually, maybe I've been tolerating something that actually isn't okay for me. And then let's say, all right, cool, now I'm clear on that. Now for me, it's like I have less reason to emote the anger because I have more clarity. And it's like the charge goes down for me personally. And then, you could feel whatever feelings of sadness. Oh, I shouldn't have abandoned myself, maybe cry a little bit, whatever. But then you also get to a place where, your anger is actually directing you to a boundary, or it's directing you to a deeper level of clarity, which then you can communicate. And what I feel like happens a lot is we play this horrible game of like ping pong that I see with partners. It's like, all right, you start to get a little bit mad, then there's a reaction from the other person. They start to get a little riled up, then you shut up. And then that's where resentment builds. That's where trust ends in the relationship. She can't trust you because you're not going to speak up. And she wants your truth. Everyone wants your truth, but they don't know it yet sometimes. And even if it triggers the F out of them, it's like, and the way that I look at it, it's like there's a timeline, right? So it's like you continue to do that. You repress your truth. Now, by law, by energetics, something has to happen in the relationship, or something has to happen in your life that is a effect of the cause, which is dysfunction, which is you repressing your anger. So for example, you repress it, then, oh wow, I just got sick out of nowhere. Oh my gosh, how did this happen? I just got into a car accident. My partner just broke up with me seemingly out of nowhere. And it's like, you didn't tend to the embers of the fire, and now you're responsible for the whole freaking forest being burned down because you didn't tend to that thing. And what I've learned more from actually a really awesome mentor of mine is like to actually just be really meticulous. Like, notice what you're agreeing to, notice like what's in the space, notice like the way you're relating, notice the anger when it's an irritation. Practice that, so you don't have to deal with almost punching a hole in the wall, and I think that's important. And just to get that shit out of your space ASAP.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Notice the anger when it's an irritation.
Right. And then you tend to that and you like create resolution there.
Mm-hmm.
And that shows why there's so much rage in the world, is because so many of us are backed up on our truth.
Yeah. And it seems like shame and anger both have that, the same thing, where it's like they fester so much in the darkness, right? So the more they're pushed back, the more it's going to come out even more extreme, especially thinking guys, there's sort of this externalizing because of, hormones and different things. It's just like, it's more outward. Yeah. What about showing anger to the feminine? What new layer gets added in there because of, especially being in the post Me Too world? It's a very, hopefully it was the case before Me Too as well, but, especially now that everyone is so much more hyper aware of all of this. How does that maybe change the experience of a guy wanting to experience his anger or share his anger?
Well, I think it's important to do it in a safe space, a safe container, whether it's with like brothers or a therapist or a coach or, but you asked about the feminine. So I would just say, just be aware of how you're feeling. And one, you can always afford to take like 10 deep breaths. Like, it's never that big of a hurry where you can't stop and just get still for a minute. So I would say just consciously get in the habit of breathing, of getting centered. And from that space, then you can communicate like, hey, I need to go out for a walk, or hey, I need to go do this. I need to go cool off. Then have a conversation. Or you can have a conversation in the heat of the moment if you feel like you can really control and contain like that in a responsible way, and while still honoring your feelings. So that could look like, hey, when you did this, I felt XYZ, and taking responsibility for what's there. You know, also feeling into like why, because anger is always a cover emotion. So it's like, what's the sadness underneath the anger that I'm feeling? And I'd say third way, if it, you know, makes sense in the situation, like transmute that shit into like some hot, passionate sex or something like that, depending on the situation, if that feels right as well.
Do you think there's ever any value? Because you said when you're explaining your anger, showing your anger, do it in a way that is controlled and responsible.
Yeah, maybe not controlled, but responsible is the right word.
Okay. So let's keep the responsible piece and like put the controlled piece away, because I'm curious about how can you be responsible with your anger? And let's just pretend like in this scenario, you're actually getting loud. Like, is it healthy ever? Is it ever healthy for a man to, of course, scream, yell, punch your pillow, buy a plastic bat, and go to town on your pillow, like get it all out? Is it ever healthy not to do that behind closed doors, though? Like, you have your own anger practice, but can you then bring it to your partner in a way where you can demonstrate your anger and basically make anger safe? Like, make anger safe both for man and for woman. Make anger a safe expression to fully embody with like the and like the like yells and like rage, maybe like pounding your fists. Can we show each other this in us and make it responsible and make it safe?
I'd say so. And I'd also just say that takes a lot of trust. Like, in a place where there's so many, I would imagine for a lot of women that could bring up a lot of fear. Like, especially seeing that like what might look like an uncontrolled, like, I don't know what the fuck he's gonna do type rage. I would say you just really need control, not responsibility.
Yeah.
And maybe
boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe at first it could be good to do it like a therapist or a coach or someone who could hold space, because I'd say that's pretty, I don't like to use the word advanced, but I guess for context sake, it's like, yeah, you have to really know yourself, and you have to really know where your partner's at. And you guys both have to really be down for the cause.
And I think the other piece to take into account here is each person's unique experience growing up. So I think everyone has such a different just experience with rage and anger and violence. And so for some, it can be very triggering, even the tiniest thing. And for some, it's the opposite. I know I can speak to one of my relationships where I actually had the opposite problem. I was like, I don't see you're never angry. And I know that it's not possible that you're not angry ever. And that actually makes you less trustable. And so I would like train him to bring up the volume of his voice. And I was like, if you need to throw something, as long as not at me, like I'm good with that. Like I can tolerate that, and I'm giving you permission to do that because it doesn't trigger me. In fact, doing the opposite, like just feeling like there's this silent energy of like, you're just there, and I can feel my feminine instincts are like, something's off. That has me and my nervous system like 10 times more on edge than just being like, oh, you threw a tantrum and now we're done. Now we can go eat dinner. Great.
100%,
but that's my personal, I don't want to speak to the experience of all, women, because I know I didn't grow up in a household where someone just threw shit at me. You know what I mean? So I'm sure if that happened, it would be an incredibly different experience. And I think my partner was trying to honor that version. Like, what if, he's trying to be responsible? So I think it's also sort of like the two people coming together and addressing what are their unique histories and what feels comfortable for each person as well in terms of the level of anger or holding back is needed.
100%. I think one thing I heard a while back that was really good is healing is experiencing the opposite. So it's like maybe the most healing thing for that person is to have someone that they love be able to hold space for them to throw a pillow. And that's like the cathartic moment that they never had. So it's like completing whatever emotions inside of us that are incomplete, that like want completion. I think what's important to realize is that we're all calling for completion and integration, and there's going to be situations, relationships, people that manifest that. Like, okay, you still need to integrate this, you still need to complete this, you still need to, like, this cycle still needs to be completed, and I don't think it'll stop until it gets completed.
Yeah, I love that you talk about this emotion of completion. Like, it has to complete, and it's going to find a way to complete. Whether you were saying earlier something about like the fire, and like you create this whole fire and string of events, or you do your work to be conscious and notice when you have an emotion come up and find a responsible way to complete it. And this 100%. Is such a long process. Like, and I'm in my own little world here. So I have my own experiences of like anger. I went to a workshop once where the men were to show us their full-on warrior killer energy. And so I was working with a very practiced man. Like, he had done this a lot, and he was also an actor. And
I think I've been to that workshop too.
Oh, really?
The John Winelands and
yes.
Yeah.
We interviewed him earlier today as well.
Nice.
But I was working with someone who is an actor and a speech coach. So like, he is like down pat with demonstrating an emotion. And he showed me his full-on anger, and his face was, again, this is in the safety of a container, and this was set. We got instructors, but his face was like so full-on red and like yelling and like rah, and it totally did something within me that was first like, what's happening? This is so like scary, to be honest, like scary, like scare, because that's my normal response. Yelling, screaming, red in the face, that's never been something that was safe ever. Mm-hmm. And then in that moment, there was also something that happened that calmed my nervous system, where I was hearing all these men yelling, and I was realizing what was going on. And this was them revealing like what's deep down within them, which is the capacity to have a lot of anger. And let's not even just say anger, let's say emotion, just an outburst of emoting. That's within every man. And John was saying, like, you see this? They're carrying this with them all the time. And it calmed me, and it calmed my nervous system to see it, to witness it, and it actually be connected to their heart. The way my partner did it was so connected to his heart, and it calmed me, and it made me smile, which is, again, like not what happens when we're fighting with our lover and we really want something, we're trying to get something through. But there is so much value to going and doing workshops like this, so that, number one, your nervous system just gets calmed in the presence of that explosive of emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a wonderful example.
I'm also curious, in the context of, like, we all know that a lot of the stuff that's gone down in our society is a result of so much repressed emotion on behalf of the masculine, right? And so I'm curious, like, what do you want women to know about your experience? Like, how can we possibly, like, what's one thing we can do to support in creating a safe container for you to express your emotions, whether they're of the darker, side, or I guess the lighter too?
I would just say something like this is very healing, like what you guys are doing, or people are doing. Sorry, I said that twice. Just having that be less of a taboo subject in conversation, and honoring when even someone comes up to you. Like, I would say as a woman to notice when a man is like coming up to you, let's say you're at a bar or somewhere, and he's literally approaching you, like wanting to connect with you, to honor that. And that doesn't mean you have to continue the conversation, but if a man bearing his heart to someone or wanting to connect with someone experiences someone looking disgusted or looking like with this harsh energy, like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. I'd say that's just something to be aware of, and you can welcome someone initiating without reciprocating in a way that's healthy.
Oh my God, that makes me emotional. Like, that makes me emotional just thinking about, like, I've never experienced that, of being vulnerable and bearing my heart and like seeing someone and wanting to approach them and approaching them and then getting this look of disgust. I can't imagine how challenging that would be. And that makes me create or feel so much more compassion for men, because y'all do this all the time. Y'all get rejected all the time. And it makes me think of like this small example of like people, and this is just bothers me, but I see all these Facebook posts and people saying like, I don't go to the gym to get hit on. Stop hitting on me at the gym. This is
exactly.
So like women get so frustrated at men hitting on them at the gym. And I've never understood that. Not every woman, of course, but I've never understood that, because they're connecting with someone who has something else in common with them. And we are able to honor the desire for connection without doing what they want. We are empowered. We are sovereign. We can make our choice to say yes or no. That's up to us. But we can also honor this part of you and the masculine and every human on this earth that's deep down. We are all the same. We are all craving connection. All of us.
And I 100% like, I feel both of your hearts in this conversation, and I'm going to come in only because I want there to be all the voices heard in this specific sub convo of the convo, which is that I can also have so much empathy and compassion for the woman. And I'm one of those who does not go to the gym specifically because there's men there. Like, I just don't go. I also don't like the gym, but that's a separate conversation. But there is in my like genes, I can feel it, like all like my mom and my grandma and like all these different lifetimes of like having to close up just being in a public space. You know, there's so many instances up until like a few weeks ago where it's like the second I get comfortable and embodied and connected to myself, which is a right that I believe I should have as a woman out in a public space, I'm not getting naked and doing weird shit. Like, I'm literally just being in my body, but being really soft and open in my body, and then getting instantly violated. Right. And so when that continues to happen over and over again, and I'm a teacher of this work of softening, and yet that still shows up like that. Even when there is a man who comes with an incredibly open heart, who is wanting to connect from a very innocent place, who's not going to violate me, it's so hard to not have that instinctive response to protect myself. It's just our animal instinct, right? So I think that there is a place where this can be true and this can be true.
Totally.
I'm curious what constitutes as a violation. Like, what would make you go from being soft and embodied to closed off?
Well, I mean, the most recent example, honestly, was a guy pulling his dick out. So, I mean, it was like pretty much a violation.
Guys, you gotta get it together.
I mean, I'm speaking the truth, because I've decided that on these conversations, like, I'm going to talk the way I talk to my girlfriends. And, you know, I was just laying on the beach, minding my own business, finally having a moment after teaching at a retreat and being like so in my masculine and being like, oh, I can like feel my body and just feel the sand and the breeze and, you know, all the things that I tell my clients, like, oh, just go out in nature and feel the things, you know. And then 2 seconds later, I look right behind me and there's an empty beach and just the guy, you know. So it's like these responses, what starts to happen is I notice I'll just be walking down the street and there's some guys who are like, hey, hi, you know, they're just walking down the street saying hi. And some of them could totally be saying hi, like, out of just being polite guys. And then some of them, if you say hi back, are going to start to get, you know, they're going to start harassing you, walking, you know, with you on the street. And so we automatically go into protection mode, because I'm like, I don't have the time. Like, there's a 50% chance that this guy is like, you know, pervy and is going to start walking with me, and I don't want to deal with this. I have to run errands. So we just go into that contracted mode. And so I think, you know, the hope is that as we educate, as we have more conversations, as we move into a place where everyone starts to feel more safe, and these guys who are being pervy because their anger and their sexual shame is repressed, right? Like, so if we can heal on a global level, then these instances aren't going to need to happen, and we can, as women, soften more, I think.
I'm gonna pose an interesting question, and I'm curious your take. What lesson? So I'm under the belief that like we attract people into our experience for a reason. So if someone keeps showing up in our experience, there's something there for us. I'm curious, like, what that translates to for you as a woman, and I'd also be curious if you have anything to share on that, Maddie. Like, what you make of that.
That's a big question. What do I make of, I don't know that, I don't know that I subscribe to the idea of like there's energetics to everything you pull in. I mean, I think the only thing that I can think of is that I'm a teacher of this work. So I'm going to continuously be initiated into it over and over again. Like, can I keep my heart open? Can I keep my body open? Even though the world is still really unsafe, right? But how do I create safety within myself? So it's constantly asking me to deepen into my own trust and my own safety, both within myself and in the world that has men in it. But I also think that, that's sort of the energy mystic part of me that's speaking, but I also equally subscribe to, and I have a very, I guess, sociology activist side of me as well. That's like, no, the world just is, we were under the patriarchy for a long time. This stuff was considered acceptable. It's just not, and it's the reality of most women, and we have to like change it, the end, So it's like, I don't know, Maddie, what do you think?
The first thing that comes up for me is creating, I want to say compassion. I want to say that, like, I instantly go, that's just my perspective. I definitely think that we, to some extent, bring in opportunities to be triggered and then healed in some way. So I think what an instance like what you were sharing earlier teaches us how we set stronger boundaries. I mean, a lot of things are happening all at once. It's like that kind of instance is lighting a fire within you for that social justice. So I think like there's a great benefit to it. I mean, it's terrible, but in that terrible instance, we create an emotion that takes us then down a path of this conversation right here, where you had this example to bring in, we can talk about it. So like maybe it is an experience is opening up the door for diving in deeper into something and exploring it. Maybe it's creating anger, which anger creates change in some way. Like in this instance, like that wasn't cool. And that's crazy because that happened to me last week. I didn't actually see anything. So I was on the subway and I was like, music, I love music. But next thing I know, the entire subway evacuated and everyone left. And it was just me and this guy and his like group of friends, and I ran off the subway, went to the next one, which is not cool. I shouldn't be in that instance, in that situation where I'm in any kind of danger in any way. And everything was fine. But that brings up these topics and these points of conversation of what can we do. For some people though, like the guy that was on the subway with me was drunk and wasted, and it was in the subway of New York City. Like, I don't know if any way that was attracted into my life because of what I'm putting out there. I think that a couple things exist at once. I think maybe there was a reason why I was in there to then bring this into this conversation. And then it just brings up more angles for us of how do we create more safety in a world like this where this happens.
Yeah, I think that's good that this is coming up just as we wrap up, because I think going back to this idea of like trusting our men, this is still the stuff that comes up. I mean, the fact that me and Maddie both in the span of a couple of weeks have had an instance like this. And I mean, it's like we can write a laundry list of all the stuff that's gone down, So I think that, for what we want to share with the men too, like sort of on the other side of things, is that we are trying so hard to soften and open, and we want to like meet you in like all your range and in that fiery, angry, like warrior killer part of you. And there's still this innate protection mechanism that comes up because of all these instances that just are like hammered into our nervous system on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you're at the subway, I'm at the beach. It wasn't even like, this is other than the situations that might happen in a private setting as well, right? This is just us walking around trying to mind our business. We're
probably going to be even more, though, like getting all of these things because the universe is like, here you go, here you go, here you go.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
That's what I think.
Anyways, anything else you want to add, Kyle, to this before we move into our little quick fire round?
I think if we want to go towards more safety in our life and go towards more trust, go to where we feel soft. Like when I'm about to speak, is this bringing about more softness or is this bringing about hardness? Is this bringing me towards relief and joy, or is it bringing me towards tension and protection? For men and women, like, to have that in mind when we want to create connection with one another.
Mm.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Kyle, where can people connect with you online? What do you got going on?
You can connect with me online on Facebook and Instagram. So my Instagram is Kyle_Lipton, and then my Facebook's just my name, Kyle Lipton.
Perfect.
Awesome. Let's do a quick fire round. All right. So these are to be answered just with one word. First one that just pops to mind. What do you love most about the feminine?
Love.
What do you love most about the masculine?
Direction.
What do you want to see more of in women?
Softness is what comes.
One word to describe yourself.
Awesome.
One word describing what you'd like to see come out of this gender conversation.
Can I use more than one word?
Go for it.
Equality, but honoring your own unique essence.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.